Video before about what I suggested somebody eats to stay healthy practicing martial arts, okay? I had stated about the Okinawan diet and eating a higher protein Okinawan diet. However, I wanted to do a video, so I looked up what is the suggestion for Taekwondo practitioners, and it's a very bad the foods are very bad. Okay, so this is the weight divisions, yada yada, training, blah blah blah, hydration needs, of course, you want to aim for pale yellow urine, of course, blah blah blah. Eating before competition, this is about making weight. If you are an everyday practitioner of karate or other martial arts, you don't have to worry about making weight if you're doing it for your own enjoyment. But an athlete who regularly eats a high fiber diet may lose 1 to 1.5% of the body weight in 2 days using the low residue diet. So what it is if you eat a low residue diet, which would be a diet low in fiber, you can lose 1 to 1.5% of your body weight in 2 days. So that means that you're not having a high residue diet. You're not having a lot of fiber in the body. You're not going to have bloat, and you're going to lose a lot of the extra fluid, which would be in the fiber. After the weigh-in, okay, providing excessive weight, blah, 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 is not lost. You don't have to worry about this if you're not a competitive martial artist. Eating and drinking during competition, athletes should eat a familiar breakfast, high in... This is what I found interesting. This is a very, very weird suggestion. It's not healthy. And in my opinion, you should always suggest the best instead of suggesting mediocre things. If you want somebody's body to work properly, you should suggest the best. So aside from breakfast, timing around competition may be difficult, blah, 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 So they're recommending fruit, muesli bars, sports bars, dried fruit, crisp bread, crackers, jam sandwiches, or yogurt, which does provide carbohydrate. And I'm going to go over the protein-sparing mechanism in carbohydrate. So recovery, these are the foods they recommend for recovery. Fruit smoothie, not terrible. Cereal bar, Tetra Pak, low-fat flavored milk, yogurt, and chopped fruit, bottle of water, not terrible. Ham and cheese sandwich plus a bottle of sports drink. Okay, that's whatever. Younger athletes should be encouraged to eat a health-promoting diet that allows adequate fueling for training and for growth. They should move up weight divisions as they age and grow. No crap. But the reason they're saying that is there are people that unfortunately do. You'll know this if you know anybody that wrestles. Wrestling is a very popular sport amongst children, and they'll try and drop weight even in the age of, like freaking 11 or 12 years old. It's very unhealthy. I'm going to move on and talk about my suggestions. Now, before I do that, I want people to know I'm not a physician. I'm not a chiropractor. I'm not an RN. I'm not an LPN. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a scientist. I'm nothing like that. This video does not constitute health advice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about protein. Okay, so sarcopenia is age-related muscle wasting. This is something that we want to avoid if we want to prolong our ability to practice martial arts. So nutrition screening to identify individuals at nutritional risk of unintended weight loss. Nutrition care process, okay. So with protein, you want to shoot for 1 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is 69 to 102 grams a day for the average person. I would go a little bit higher than that, and I'm going to explain that in a little bit. Vitamin D deficiency is the most prevalent nutritional deficiency for older adults, regardless of race or ethnicity. Levels of vitamin D decrease with age. Depleted vitamin D levels are associated with low muscle strength. Supplementation of vitamin D in individuals with low levels increases muscle strength. Okay? Vitamin D levels should be measured in all sarcopenic individuals, and vitamin D supplementation in doses sufficient to increase levels above 100 nanoliters per liter should be given as an adjunctive therapy. Okay. Tips for adding protein. And these are not terrible tips at all, but I'm going to get into a plant-based version of this for people that wish to follow a plant-centered longevity diet. So add cheese to vegetables, salads, potatoes, rice noodles, and casseroles. Cheese, really, unless you're eating low-fat or non-fat cheese, you should view cheese as a fat more than a protein, because the primary macronutrient in a lot of cheese is fat. Add hard-cooked eggs to salads. Again, I would favor the egg whites. Okay, consider Greek yogurt alone or add to fruit and cereal. Supplement diet with high-protein bars or a fruit smoothie made with milk or yogurt. When you're eating high-protein bars, make sure they're not high in sugar also. Add peanut butter to sandwiches, toast, crackers, or muffins. Again, peanut butter is a decent source of protein, but you need to understand that peanut butter really should be considered more of a fat than a protein. Add a scoop of powdered milk, whey protein, or powdered commercial supplement mix to each cup of regular milk daily. These also can be added into hot cereal. Select commercial supplements with high-quality protein. Add nuts, seeds, or wheat germ to casseroles, breads, muffins, pancakes, and cookies, or use nuts, seeds, or wheat germ to top fruit, cereal, ice cream, and yogurt or in place of breadcrumbs. Physical activity. Nearly all older adults can benefit from resistance and strength training to increase muscle strength. We've already been through this in my previous video. Overall endurance exercises improve cardiovascular and circulatory systems. Strength training reduces sarcopenia, builds muscle, and possibly prevents osteoporosis. Now, you'll remember I talked about how aerobic activity in a previous video. I talked about how aerobic activity actually turns on genes that reduce sarcopenia. So aerobic exercise also helps with sarcopenia. Hormone and drug therapies, testosterone therapy for men with low testosterone levels has been linked to increased muscle mass. However, it hasn't been associated with improved functional performance or a reduction in mortality. Prevention is key. It is more effective to adopt strategies designed to prevent or slow the progression of sarcopenia than it is to treat the condition in elderly patients. Okay. So what's the ideal amount of protein to consume to prevent sarcopenia? So aging does not inevitably reduce the anabolic response to a high-quality protein meal. Ingestion of approximately 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal maximally stimulates muscle protein synthesis in both young and older individuals. However, muscle protein synthesis is blunted in the elderly when protein and carbohydrate are co-ingested, or when the quantity of protein is less than approximately 20 grams per meal. So you have to shoot for at least 30 grams per meal. Supplementing regular mixed nutrient meals with leucine may also enhance the muscle protein synthetic response. I'm going to get into this when I talk about some supplements, such as branched chain amino acids, one of which is leucine. Summary: on the basis of recent work, they proposed a novel and specific dietary approach to prevent or slow muscle loss with aging. Rather than recommending a large global increase in the recommended daily allowance of protein for the elderly individuals, clinicians should stress the importance of ingesting a sufficient amount of protein with each meal to maximize muscle protein synthesis. Okay, introduction. Everybody knows what sarcopenia is. It's insidious, blah, blah, blah.
aging and skeletal muscle protein synthesis response to feeding. Several studies have examined the acute and chronic effects of protein ingestion or supplementation on muscle protein anabolism in elders, and the results have been well documented. The majority of studies suggest that a moderate to large serving of protein or amino acids increases muscle protein synthesis similarly in both young and elderly. Conversely, one recent study with a nice mix of signaling and metabolic measures but limited cohort reported that 10 and 20 gram servings of essential amino acids were unable to stimulate muscle protein synthesis in older individuals to the same level as noted in the young. Historically, the majority of protein metabolism studies have focused on the anabolic response to ingestion of protein or amino acids alone. However, when protein and carbohydrate are co-ingested, elderly respond with a diminished anabolic response compared with their younger counterparts. Demonstrated that after ingestion of an amino acid glucose mixture, now remember, this is not normal carbohydrates, this is straight glucose. Muscle protein synthesis increased in the young, but remained unchanged in the elderly. Okay, so don't consume your protein with sugar if you're old. It appears that aging may be associated with reduced anabolic efficiency in response to a carbohydrate-containing mixed nutrient meal. Fortunately, a modest bout of physical activity may be able to sensitize aging muscle. So, modest bout of physical activity doesn't have to be crazy. We have recently shown that 45 minutes of treadmill walking, so walking in older individuals, the evening prior to a hyperinsulinemic eugoglycemic clamp restores the ability of insulin to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. More recently, they discovered that ingestion of leucine-enriched essential amino acids, okay, so leucine, which is a key branch-chain amino acid, stimulates muscle protein synthesis to a similar extent in young and old, okay, during the first 6 hours following exercise. These data provide further supporting evidence that regular physical activity, but remember, regular physical activity, walking on a treadmill for 45 minutes, okay? Okay, so regular physical activity, that's the physical activity they're talking about. It's not crazy, it's not HIIT, it's not anything like that. It's walking on a treadmill for 45 minutes or maintaining the normal protein anabolic plays an important role in restoring or maintaining the normal protein anabolic response in skeletal muscles of older individuals. As mentioned, numerous studies support the notion that ingestion of a sufficient amount of amino acids or protein results in a similar increase in muscle protein synthesis in young and elderly. However, several recent studies have adopted a more practical approach and sought to examine the ability of protein-rich foods like milk to stimulate protein anabolism. Although many of these studies have focused on younger population, they are important as they more closely reflect responses to actual dietary practices and hence provide information on how choices may influence accrual of muscle mass and ultimately functional capacity. In one study directly comparing young and elderly, it was reported that a moderate 113-gram serving of intact protein, that is lean beef, contains sufficient amino acids, 30 grams total. So keep that in mind, 113 grams of lean beef only has 30 grams of protein and 12 grams of essential amino acids, but this is sufficient to increase mixed muscle protein synthesis by 50% in both young and elderly alike. Should protein intake be increased in the elderly? The adequacy of recommended dietary allowance for protein has been the subject of renewed debate over the past 12 months. The current recommendation for protein intake for all men and women aged 19 years and older is 0.8 grams per kilogram. The recommendations were established by the Institute of Medicine and based on short-duration nitrogen balance studies in young adults. Much of the recent commentary has argued that the current RDA for protein, while fulfilling the criteria as the minimum
daily average dietary intake level that meets the nutritional requirements of nearly all healthy individuals does not promote optimal health or protect elders from sarcopenic muscle loss. Although there is no consensus on the degree to which dietary protein needs change with advancing age, there is general agreement that additional longer-term trials with defined health outcomes are needed to firmly establish the optimal protein intake range for various population groups. Although absolutely necessary, this process is certainly complicated by the host of mechanisms that are contributing to sarcopenia. In the following sections, these people argue that whereas a modest increase in protein intake beyond 0.8 grams per kilogram may indeed be beneficial for some elders, there is a greater need to specifically examine the dose and distribution of protein across each meal. An adequate amount of protein intake with each meal is essential. This is what Dr. Jeffrey Life, remember I did a video on him, this is what he explains. Although specialized supplementation with amino acid products may be beneficial or necessary in specific elderly or clinical populations, the most practical means of promoting skeletal muscle protein anabolism for the majority of older adults is to include a moderate serving of protein of high biological value during each meal. For example, an often neglected aspect of daily protein intake that directly impacts net protein balance is the distribution of protein across 3 or more daily meals. For a 75 kilogram individual, the RDA represents 60 grams of protein per day, or if distributed evenly across 3 meals, 20 grams of protein per meal. A 20-gram serving of most animal or plant-based proteins contains 5 to 8 grams of essential amino acids. So keep that in mind. Most animal or plant-based proteins contains 5 to 8 grams of essential amino acids, which are primarily responsible for stimulating muscle protein synthesis. This is an important issue because it has been recently shown that aging is associated with an inability of skeletal muscle to respond to low doses of essential amino acids, whereas higher doses, 10 to 15 grams, are capable of stimulating muscle protein synthesis to a similar extent as in the young. To examine the effect of protein dose on muscle protein anabolism using a protein-rich food, these people recently demonstrated that ingestion of a large single 340-gram serving of lean beef, 90 grams of protein, in a cohort of healthy young and elderly individuals does not elicit a greater anabolic response than a serving of 1/3 the size. So eating a ton of protein does not elicit a greater response than eating 1/3 the size. Although this response may be influenced by physical activity, habitual and acute, and body size, lean muscle mass, the data suggests that despite the additional protein and energy content, ingestion of more than 30 grams of protein in a single meal may be an energetically inefficient means of stimulating muscle protein synthesis. So you're wasting your money if you're eating more than 30 grams of protein in a single meal. Okay? If we accept that 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein is necessary to maximally stimulate skeletal muscle protein synthesis, then it seems reasonable to suggest that ingestion of this amount of high-quality protein at each meal could be a usable strategy to maintain muscle mass in the elderly. Okay? So we provide a pictorial example, blah, blah, blah. That's the leucine supplementation to prevent sarcopenia. This is important to understand. The rationale for the use of a nutritional supplement to slow or prevent sarcopenic muscle loss is based on the assumption that it will improve net muscle protein synthesis above that afforded by regular meals alone. In addition to this direct anabolic effect, the additional energy/nutrient content of the supplement should not interfere with the normal anabolic response to protein consumed as part of daily meals. Many attempts have been made to combat muscle and strength loss in elderly via protein or amino acid supplementation. In some cases, protein and energy supplementation has been shown to be effective. However, other trials, particularly those involving acutely ill or frail patient populations, have been unsuccessful. In some instances, protein supplementation increases satiety and simply replaces voluntary ingestion of regular menu items. For others, cost, availability, or medical complications such as dysphagia, meaning a difficulty swallowing, or impaired kidney function may limit, meaning you can't eat a ton of protein if you have impaired kidney function, or at least you can't eat a ton of animal protein. I should get into that in a later video too. Plant protein doesn't seem to affect the nephrology issues. If such instances, maximizing protein anabolism, whereas minimizing the amount of volume of supplementation ingested would be desirable. Leucine is an insulin secretotage with well-described effects on translation, initiation, and muscle protein synthesis. Notably, leucine does cause insulin to be secreted, and it increases muscle protein synthesis. Notably, leucine is a potent activator of the mammalian target of rapamycin. People might be familiar with that because I talk about it a lot when I'm talking about anti-aging. A lot of gerontologists want to knock that down. So nutrient and energy sensing signaling pathway in skeletal muscle, increasing insulin availability, increases muscle protein synthesis by enhancing phosphorylation of AKT and PKB, an upstream regulator of mTOR, whereas increased leucine availability promotes the phosphorylation and activation of downstream effectors of mTOR. Okay, with increasing age, muscle may become resistant to stimulatory effects of normal postprandial concentrations of leucine, although such a deficit could contribute to reduced muscle protein anabolism and loss of muscle mass. Aging and interaction of physical activity and protein nutrient intake. Remember, I'm talking about people that are actively doing karate 2 to 3 to 4 times a week. Elderly, and so this is fine. Elderly individuals are at increased risk of being physically incapacitated or placed on bed rest for an extended period of time. The loss of lean body mass is dramatically increased during inactivity and is driven by chronic imbalance between muscle protein synthesis and the breakdown facilitated by decreased activation of the mTOR nutrient signaling pathway. In recent studies examining changes in protein synthesis and muscle mass in healthy adults subjected to bed rest, older individuals experienced an approximate 3-fold greater loss of lean leg muscle mass compared with a cohort of younger individuals confined to bed for 28 days. The benefits of regular resistance exercise in elderly have been well described. However, unlike younger individuals, the chronic additive or synergistic effects of combined protein supplementation and resistance exercise on muscle mass and function are less clear. In a recent study, 36 older men and women performed 12 weeks of resistance training in association with a lower protein diet or a higher protein diet. There was a general improvement in all outcomes measured. However, there were no significant differences between the lower protein groups and the higher protein groups. Okay, reported the differences that daily protein intake, blah, 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 did not differentially affect lean muscle mass. Conclusion, aging is associated with a reduced ability to stimulate muscle protein synthesis in response to feeding, insulin, and resistance exercise. They propose a novel and specific dietary approach to prevent or slow muscle loss. Clinicians should stress the importance of ingesting a sufficient amount of protein with each meal to maximize muscle protein synthesis, whereas being cognizant of total energy intake, they propose a dietary plan that includes 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein per meal. Nutrition and sarcopenia. Conclusion. Epidemiological studies suggest that a low protein intake is associated with sarcopenia. The effectiveness and safetiness for sarcopenic obesity is unclear. Okay, so some studies showed the effectiveness of these nutritional factors for sarcopenia. However, we should consider the appropriate funding. Okay, So keep that in mind. So epidemiological studies suggest that low protein intake is associated with sarcopenia. People unfamiliar with nutrition may not understand that if you're only eating protein, or if you're eating protein and fat, this will cause you to lose muscle mass more quickly than if you're eating a balanced diet of protein, fat, and carbohydrate. So the protein-sparing action of carbohydrates, it is well known that non-nitrogenous foods may spare body protein. The carbohydrates are unquestionably more efficient as protein sparers than the fats. The starvation output of nitrogenous waste products, or at least urea, can be notably diminished by the ingestion of either of the non-nitrogenous nutrients, meaning fat and carbohydrates, through the superiority of the carbohydrates in depressing the loss of nitrogen. Nitrogen is always manifestly greater if the carbohydrates are omitted from the diet or even replaced by fat. The effect of the nitrogen output is promptly seen. Various theories have been proposed to explain this unique function of carbohydrates in nutrition. One view has maintained that a certain concentration of blood sugar is always necessary for proper maintenance of physiological activities. The sugar can be produced from proteins if carbohydrates are not available directly, and since in the absence of carbohydrate under physiological conditions, fats cannot well supply. So when your body needs sugar, it must break down protein to supply that sugar, because your body can't do that with fats. So that's why you need to take in carbohydrates to spare muscle protein. So BCAAs. And let's see what BCAAs have to do with promoting on helping you retain muscle mass. So let's see here. So in a single blind study, these results show that BCAA supplementation in trained individuals performing resistance training while on a hypocaloric diet, meaning a lower calorie diet, can maintain lean body mass and preserve skeletal muscle performance while losing body fat mass. So keep in mind, they put these 17 resistance-trained athletes, male athletes, were randomized into groups, blah, 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 both received their blah, blah. Okay, results, BCAA group, blah, 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 da, 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 da. BCAA group, meaning the branched-chain amino acid group, retained their lean muscle mass better than those that didn't, meaning they retained their muscle mass, while those that were not, that were on the hypocaloric diet, meaning a low-energy diet, lost more muscle mass because their body broke down their muscle protein as energy, but those supplemented with the branched chain amino acids did not have to break down the muscle protein, or the muscle protein was replenished through the signaling of muscle protein synthesis by the branched chain amino acids, in particular leucine. So one of the three nutrients that helps to preserve muscle mass, you have your amino acids / protein, you have your vitamin D, and then you have your omega-3s. So one of the problems is people like to cut fat from their diet when they want to lose weight, and that's all well and good, but you need omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids, and some people say you need omega-9s, although omega-3s and omega-6s are definitely essential. Your body can't make them, although your body does make omega-9s when it breaks down body fat. So chia seeds are one of the best sources of omega-3s. Brussels sprouts are another ideal source of omega-3s. Okay. Algae oil is another great source of EPA and DHA. Hemp seed oil, another great source, or hemp seeds, another great source. Walnuts, another great source. Flaxseed, another great source. Perilla oil, which perilla seeds are often used in Korean cuisine. And I'm disappointed to see that canola oil wasn't mentioned, unfortunately. Omega-3 fatty acids are an important part of the diet and essential to your health. If you don't eat fish because of dietary reasons or personal preference, you can still reap the benefits of omega-3 fatty acids in your diet by enjoying those foods. Evidence of the health benefits of canola oil.
Obviously, everything I'm reading here is going to be in the description. Please feel free to follow it. I didn't feel like going over all the health benefits one by one because it would take 45 minutes. But the conclusion, after 15 years of continuing research on canola oil, since the latest review by DuPont, evidence shows a number of potential health benefits of canola oil consumption. Canola oil can now be regarded as one of the healthiest edible vegetable oils in terms of its biological functions and its ability to aid in reducing disease-related risk factors and improving health. Current research is expected to provide more complete evidence to support the health-promoting effects of canola oil when consumed at levels consistent with dietary guidelines. So what about vitamin D? Okay, let's talk about vitamin D. Vitamin D is the third nutrient that helps to reduce sarcopenia. So let's see here. Okay. So vitamin D and metabolism, okay, it's vitamin D, mechanisms of action. Most, if not all, actions of vitamin D are mediated through a nuclear transcription factor known as vitamin D receptor. Upon entering the nucleus of a cell, vitamin D binds to the VDR and recruits another nuclear receptor known as the retinoid X receptor. In the presence of calcium balance, helps maintain serum calcium concentrations within a narrow range, is vital for normal functioning of the nervous system as well as for bone growth. Vitamin D is essential for the efficient utilization of calcium by the body. The parathyroid glands sense serum calcium concentrations and secrete parathyroid hormone. If calcium concentrations decrease below normal elevations, okay, blah, blah, blah. The active vitamin D form is released into the circulation and transported to target tissue within a target cells. Okay. Phosphorus balance. Regulations of calcium and phosphorus homeostasis are closely related, and caliotropic hormones. Vitamin D can also control serum phosphorus. Cell differentiation. This is very important to prevent cancer. Cells that are dividing rapidly are said to be proliferating. Differentiation results in the specialization of cells for specific functions in general. Differentiation of cells leads to a decrease in proliferation. While cellular proliferation is essential for growth and wound healing, uncontrolled proliferation of cells will result in certain mutations and may lead to cancer. Immunity. Acting through the VDR, vitamin D is a potent immune system modulator. Okay, so it helps to modulate the immune system and control the different immune cells. Insulin secretion. Okay, it's expressed by insulin secretion cells. Vitamin D status may have an adverse effect on insulin secretion and a glucose tolerance in type 2 diabetic. So it helps with type 2 diabetes, blood pressure regulation. Rickets, it helps prevent rickets, of course. Rickets is the deficiency disease you get from low vitamin D. Osteomalacia, muscle weakness and pain. Vitamin D deficiency causes muscle weakness and pain in children and adults. Risk factors for vitamin D deficiency, environmental factors, meaning not going in the light, concealed clothing style, not getting enough sun on the stove. Okay, sun safety measures, sun protection practices, including limiting sun wearing. So protecting your overprotection from the sun can cause vitamin D deficiency. Skin pigmentation. People with dark skin can have vitamin D deficiency because it's harder for their body to convert sunlight into vitamin D. Or honestly, they convert the cholesterol in their skin to vitamin D when the ultraviolet, the UVB rays hit the skin. Okay, so older age, the elderly have reduced capacity to synthesize vitamin D in the skin when exposed to UVB radiation. Chronic kidney disease is another issue. Fat malabsorption syndrome is another issue because you need fat to make vitamin D. Inflammatory bowel disease is another issue because you're losing fat in the stool. Obesity is another issue Magnesium deficiency can cause vitamin D deficiency. Assessing vitamin D nutritional status, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the recommended dietary allowance. That's going over the recommended dietary allowance, mortality, 9-year follow-up, disease prevention. Okay. In a 9-year follow-up analysis of the 3rd U.S. National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, blah, 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 were examined. Okay, which limits finally 2-minute analysis have suggested a modest reduction in all-cause mortality in older people supplemented with vitamin D. So there has been a modest decrease in mortality when older people are supplemented with vitamin D and calcium, but not vitamin D alone. Okay. Osteoporosis and vitamin D. Vitamin D supplementation and bone mineral density. It improves bone mineral density. Vitamin D supplementation and risk of fracture. It decreases the risk of fracture, of course. Vitamin D supplementation and postural balance, muscle strength, and risk of fall. Of course, it helps with all that. Cancer, as we just read from proliferation, it helps to modulate proliferation, stopping mutation, arresting cancer, or keeping cancer from happening, colorectal cancer, yada. Other types of cancer, autoimmune diseases, okay, diabetes mellitus. Obviously, you can read this on your own, multiple sclerosis, vitamin D exposure, rheumatoid arthritis. These are some of the things it helps with, okay? Lupus, summary, hypertension, high blood pressure, cardiovascular events and observational studies and clinical trials, type 2 diabetes. Of course, read this on your own. Toxicity, and let me get down to toxicity. Where is that at? Because obviously I supplement with vitamin D. So to prevent sarcopenia, it might be a good idea to take vitamin D. But let's get down to, so supplements. Most vitamin D supplements available without a prescription contain cholecalciferol vitamin D3. Multivitamin supplements generally provide 400 IUs to 1,000 IUs of vitamin D, D2 or vitamin D3. Single ingredient vitamin D supplements may provide 400 to 50,000 IUs of vitamin D3, but 400 IUs is the most commonly available dose. A number of calcium supplements may also provide vitamin D. A meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials suggested that the bolus doses of vitamin D2 may not always be as effective as vitamin D3. There is growing interest in using hydroxylated form of vitamin D3. Safety. Okay, this is important that people understand this. Vitamin D toxicity has not been observed as a result of sun exposure. The reason is that excessive sunlight exposure generates a number of biological inert photoproducts. Okay, vitamin D toxicity induces abnormally high serum calcium concentration, which could result in bone loss, kidney stones, and calcification of the organs, like the heart and kidneys, if untreated over long periods of time. Hypercalcemia has been observed following daily doses of greater than 50,000 IUs of vitamin D overall. Research suggests that vitamin D toxicity is very unlikely in healthy people at intake levels lower than 10,000 IUs per day. However, the Food and Nutrition Board has conservatively set the tolerable upper limit at 4,000 IUs per day. So keep that in mind. These are the upper intake levels. So if we're an infant, 1,000 IUs. Infants 6 to 12 months, 1,500 IUs. Children 1 to 3, 2,500 IUs. Children 4 to 8, 3,000 IUs. Children 9 to 13, 4,000 IUs. Adolescents 4,000 IUs. Adults 19 years of age and older, 4,000 IUs. Drug interactions. Okay, this goes over the drug interactions. Please read this when you get a chance. It'll be in the description.
So, if you're trying to optimize your martial arts performance, what foods should your diet be made up of? Well, they should be made up of the foods that promote longevity. Dark cruciferous vegetables, extra virgin olive oil, peas and lentils, blueberries, barley, oatmeal, nuts. Okay, these are all healthy foods. Being that beans should be one of the principal sources of protein and one of the principal sources of carbohydrate in the diet, what beans are highest in protein? Well, of course, soybeans, followed by lentils, large white beans, cranberry beans, split peas, pinto beans, kidney beans, black beans, navy beans, and lima beans. Of course, you can eat all of these beans and mix and match these beans too. Another bit on what beans are highest in protein. So, of course, lentils, large white beans, adzuki beans, split peas, red kidney beans, pinto beans, black beans, navy beans, chickpeas, lima beans. Consideration for eating beans: you need a rotation of amino acids, often called the building blocks of protein. Blah blah blah. Complete protein. Yada da da. Beans are versatile additions to your diet. You can soak and cook dried beans, or you can save time by opting for canned beans that you rinse and drain. Blah blah blah. Okay. And I'm gonna call it quits for this video. That's my 2 cents on the proper diet for martial arts. So, well, actually, let me rephrase this. You should be eating a sufficient amount of protein regularly, and you should be eating a balanced diet with the following foods. So, of course, like I said, you should construct a healthy, balanced diet, and you should look toward either the USDA food pyramid, or the myplate.gov, or you should look toward even better, the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate, and you should try and construct a health-promoting diet to optimize your performance in martial arts by consuming these foods: dark cruciferous vegetables, extra virgin olive oil, peas and lentils, blueberries, barley, oatmeal, and nuts. And that would help optimize your performance, reduce inflammation, and encourage the maintenance of healthy muscle, and reduce the prevalence of injury, and encourage quicker recovery from injury should it happen. And again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist. That's all for this video. This video does not constitute health advice. Enjoy the video. Check out the links in the description.